All right, everyone, welcome to the Bible Prophecy Rascal. My name is Hunter France. We're going to be talking about the final week of Daniel and the timeline Daniel gives us. I put this out on social media, put it on Facebook, and I said, hey, if anyone has any topics they'd like me to touch on, let me know. And I got a couple. I got the image of the beast with AI for my mother, which I am contemplating on making. I've been wanting to make that for 2 or 3 weeks now, and that's still upcoming. But I got another interesting one about the final week of Daniel. This comes from Daniel 9, where there's a prophecy concerning the antichrist, and it is the antichrist. It could also include Jesus fulfilling this in some type of way, some sort of dual fulfillment kind of thing. But ultimately, it's about the antichrist. Now, we know this because in the original language, we read the word Berit. We don't read the words Berit Kodesh. So in the Old Testament, anytime you see the Holy Covenant mentioned, you typically see it as Berit Kodesh. In this instance, you only see it as Berit, which is basically like an agreement between two people, two nations. You could think of it like an accord or a coalition, signed agreement that you see pretty much on a daily basis. Today, in the modern world, we just don't call it covenant anymore. We call it the other things, like an accord, a ceasefire, a treaty. That's what it is. It's what's pointing to. This actually connects, interestingly, to Isaiah 28. This is an end times prophecy. This is God. He's returned and he is annulling an agreement, a covenant with death. Now, historically, this does have a pattern of fulfillment. And interestingly, again, it's with the kings of the north. So Isaiah 28, Israel is coming into agreements with their neighbors. And look, they're allowed to do stuff like this. It's good to seek peace with your neighbors. It's more about their reliance on this to achieve lasting peace rather than the promises God gave them. The reliance on worldly means rather than God. Self-reliance, okay? A government for the people, by the people, of the people. I love America, but I would like one day in the millennial reign, this will be the case, a government for God, by God, and of God. That will include his people. Don't get me wrong, though. I love being an American. Go Army, beat Navy. But back into the text. So we know this is some sort of a secular type of governmental agreement that pertains to Israel and it coming into alliances either with or concerning the king of the north. And the king of the north will eventually come in and reaffirm it. This is a very key point in Daniel 9 as the Antichrist, and it's a common misconception that the Antichrist shows up and makes peace in the Middle East. But that's not actually what the text describes. Like if you go to Daniel 8, you read about this war that leads to the rise of what Daniel calls the little horn, which is also a reference to the Antichrist. But it doesn't rise up until after that war. So as somewhere else in the Bible where it says a people gathered from war or a nation that's without walls, without barriers, there's no gates, everyone's kind of at ease. So this is typically what happens when you see great wars. People settle down, you get this era of peace. It's like World War I. Post-World War I, you had the roaring 20s, and then of course the economy collapsed and the conditions became set for a new war to emerge from the rising of a little horn in Germany, right? This is leading into World War II. It's kind of a preset of an environment similar to that, where everyone drops their guard. So Daniel 8 leads to the rising of the little horn, which coincides with Daniel 11, the king of the north. Well, let's go to the text, the king of the north. And I know we're kind of skipping around. We'll head back to this final week. All right, so in Daniel 11, verse 21, he will be succeeded by a contemptible person who has not been given the honor of royalty. He will invade the kingdom when his people feel secure and then will seize it through intrigue. But he also invades. So this is like political/military coercion and things like that going on. In Daniel 9, so this final 7 years, you go and read Daniel 9, it says he reaffirmed this agreement for 1 week. This is pointing us to understand that the final time of Jacob's trouble takes place within a 7-year time period. But the time of Jacob's trouble is a specific 3.5 years, but it's within that 7 or that week, right? That Shavua, which basically means, if I haven't said it already, it's unit of 7. So it's a unit of time, a 7-year period. Now, most teachers and most theologians who take their Bible seriously look at Daniel 9:27 and they say this begins the final 7 years. They're their feet are pretty settled on that idea. And I get it. I'm a little more hesitant in that I don't think it has to legit start the exact 7-year countdown, but that it could take some time around the beginning. Now, it probably does take place at the very beginning. I might be getting a little too, I don't know if literal is the right word. I might be overthinking it. But I do believe it probably does. But it does take place somewhere in the beginning, just taken into what the text says. So, with that being said, the other part of the question that I had was, are we there yet? Are we in the final 7 years? Now, let me just say, I'm going to say this up front. I do not believe that we are in, or the body of Christ is in, a time where we can definitively say anything about where we are in reference to this time period that is in the future. What we do have are conditions set that we should be paying attention, because the idea of we could be in the 7 years, it exists. Let me explain why we can't know just yet. So in Daniel 8, we're staying in Daniel. In Daniel 8, there's prophecies concerning the daily sacrifices and the abomination of desolation. This is like when you first really start hearing about something happening at the temple. And Daniel tells us that there are sacrifices. These are sacrifices that are regular, daily, that require a temple. So this isn't like, I go out and slaughter a fattened calf right here in my backyard and build an altar. No, this is like temple-specific sacrifices. Well, the Antichrist comes in and causes them to cease. In Daniel 8, that's really the first idea where we really start to understand that there is a third temple coming. Now, interesting to note, they are talking about building another temple, and they're wanting to call it a house of prayer for the nations. It's a little bit under the table, a little bit not as talked about, but I mean, heck, on October 7th, 2023, the invasion of Israel's southern border they called it Al-Aqsa flood for a reason. Now, I'm not into the conspiracy theories. Israel's not trying to destroy it per se. Excuse me, I'm a little sleepy if you see me rubbing my eyes. That's not what's happening. In fact, the people that are leading the charge in this, I think they've discussed that the temple can fit on the Temple Mount with the other buildings in the area, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and they have it on like a wing or like a corner of this plot of land. I think I probably still have this picture. I can probably put it up here and kind of show you what I'm talking about. It's very interesting. Now, this temple that they would build probably isn't the temple in the millennial reign, because Ezekiel describes a temple in the millennial reign, and it's huge. To quote the president, it's huge. It's big. And so this probably won't be that necessarily. This is the temple that John saw in the book of Revelation, right? The one that's abominated and sacrifices cease. Now, if you're picking up on this already, that right there is our first truly definitive sign. So when you get to Matthew 24, later in the New Testament, and Jesus is answering the question his disciples asked him about the end times, and he says, when you see the abomination of desolation, you know. What's interesting, and this is an old rabbinic method teaching, I forget what it's called. I think it's Remez or Remez. Definitely not how you pronounce it. But it would be a thing where he would quote a prophet, and the expectation would be that either you understand all of what the prophet said, or you go back and study it if you don't. Which means there are things that lead up to the abomination of desolation, and we've already touched on a few. There's this war, the rising of a little horn from a small people, this reinforcing of an agreement of peace of some kind. It's all taking place, and this little horn's probably, and this is where it gets tricky, right? The little horn's early rise that we have talked about is described in a way that not everyone's going to see this. It's going to be kind of subtle. And even if you do, so for example, I have shared this individual. His name is Al-Jalani. I think he goes by Al-Shara now in Syria. This individual I have highlighted as someone who has realistically fulfilled patterns in Daniel and Ezekiel and all the things the prophets say concerning the early rise of the Antichrist. And I mean that. He really has. However, there's no temple. There's no daily sacrifices. And as you continue in Daniel 11, you read about these wars that come against the kings of the south, likely Egypt. That's not happened yet, so there's still more that needs to happen. Even if those happen, we can't truly say it, not without a temple, because Jesus said that there would be wars and rumors of wars, ... Don't be scared. Don't be alarmed. The end is not yet, which basically is him saying, when you see these things, it doesn't mean it's the end times. Wars in the Middle East alone and peace agreements in the Middle East alone are not definitive proof. They're signs that should get our attention. So right now with what's going on in Iran and the rest of the Middle East, with Turkey and Syria and Saudi Arabia and the kings of the south and Egypt, Libya, and Sudan, the context is definitely being set. And so where we are in the 7-year period, I don't know, but we are in a period where it could have started. It also could have not started. The temple with daily sacrifices, both of those together are like we're there signs. Think about it. 2,300 evenings and mornings is what the angel gives us when they've begun. And then the temple's cleansed at the end of it. Does Jesus show up at the end of the 2,300 evenings and mornings and that's when it's cleansed? Or is he already kind of back in more of a pre-wrath kind of way? And at the end of 2,300 evenings and mornings, he's now in Jerusalem. And that's sometimes what I think might be the case. And where does this start though? Because 2,300 evenings and mornings isn't exactly 7 years. It's like 60 years and roughly a quarter. Not quite, but roughly a quarter. Which means that when these things begin, the end times will have already been going on for a few months. So the exact start of it, we don't really know. This is why the temple in Jerusalem is such a big deal. And I know there's so many Christians that attack this. You have Tucker Carlson out there saying just outlandish, wild things. Candace Owens, pray for these individuals. What's the other guy's name? Nick Fuentes or something like that. They either don't read their Bible, don't take it seriously, or they're getting paid by someone. Because I saw a clip of Tucker Carlson basically accusing Christians and Jews of wanting a temple, and was saying that they were some kind of satanic thing. And it's this is what the Bible says, Mr. Tucker. This is legit what the Bible, Daniel 8 tells us there will be a temple. And in the millennial reign, Ezekiel tells us there will be a temple. And get this, there's sacrifices. There certainly seem to be sacrifices happening in Ezekiel's temple. And we have never seen Ezekiel's temple. It's huge. So I hope that answers that question. I hope it clears some things up if there were any confusion about the final week of Daniel. It starts sometime around and probably right on this reinforcing of an agreement coming from some king of the north, like someone in Syria or Turkey. It doesn't have to be these individuals specifically, but someone like that coming up in a condition where there's a war in the Middle East that sets the tone for people to sort of drop their guard when it's over, and this little horn gains power, reinforces a covenant that's around 7-year period likely, and then either leads himself a war with the kings of the south, or his people go to war with the kings of the south. There's some sort of agreement made there with the king of the south getting defeated at the table. He's betrayed, and then he's pushed back, then invades Jerusalem, abominates the temple. It's that point where we can really say history has turned. We're 3.5 years from seeing Jesus rip through the sky, and sometime around there we'll be gathered. We don't know the day or the hour that he comes and gathers us, but we do know that we have a period of time that we can say he comes around about this time from the moment we see that temple abominated. That's why the scripture's there. I know this is how I'll wrap this up, because I know people are going to talk about the rapture in the comment section. Well, I assume they will. The Bible gives us these specific signs that we can see and know when they happen so that we can testify to the nations, so that when these things are beginning and taking place, we can say, this was spoken of by the prophet Daniel. The next thing you're going to see is him warring the king of the south. This is like he's abominated the temple. We can say that's the mark. We can say that's the false prophet. That's the antichrist. And then we can literally say they're going to once again go to war against the king of the south, and they will win this time. Egypt will not escape. There will be a refugee crisis going to the east into perhaps Petra, out into the mountains towards historic Edom. There's also going to be a refugee crisis to the king of the south, but they're going to get caught up in that invasion that I talked about. Those are the things we can say. Literal. And so when people who do need like this bit of proof, they're like struggling with faith, or they're just on the fence, maybe an agnostic, maybe even an atheist, but they see the pattern, you can show them that clearly, there will be people who will tie themselves, be able to become Christians. Tribulation saints is not a word, it's not a phrase in the Bible anywhere. But if anyone becomes saints during the tribulation, it will be them. All right. That is how I'll wrap this up. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent into the rapture, but there you have it. 7 years, peace covenant. I don't know if we're there yet. We could be, so we should pay attention. With that being said, love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. Maranatha. Take care of yourselves. Sleep good tonight. Have a good weekend. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye, bye. Thunder up.